Okay, if you could open the slides to chapter 13. This is a shorter chapter. We'll go through this relatively quickly. We're going to talk about process integration in the supply chains. If you'll start on slide 4, process integration is about sharing information and coordinating resources to make sure that everything in the supply chain end to end is talking to each other. So if you have certain things in one system, information coming from another supplier perhaps, or information coming from your sales force, we want to make sure all that information is talking back and forth to each other. So this chapter is going to have a lot of things in it that we've already talked about, like supplier relationship management, customer relationship management, but this chapter focuses on how all of those processes need to work together to have a seamless and mature supply chain. So if we'll go to slide 5, that is a map that just shows you what we're going to talk about today. So you don't need to understand, you don't need to memorize that, but you just need to understand it. On slide 6, we're going to talk about the steps to getting a supply chain management integration model created and then ongoing governance to make sure that it stays the way that it needs to be and that any changes that need to be made are made quickly and that there is a governance policy to make sure that the changes are supported long term. So we're going to identify the critical trading partners. So these could be people that you buy packaging from. These could be people that are your suppliers of actual raw materials. They could be the employment agency that you use if you're hiring temporary staff. It could be lots of different things, but these people are the trading partners that if you don't have them, your business cannot run. We want to, number 2, establish supply chain strategies, and this is going to give you all of the places that we need to look in the business. Not just the parts we manufacture, but we need to make sure we have, if we're using an engineering firm to help us design or test, if we're using outsourced quality, if we're using inspections, anything like that, we want to make sure everything is taken care of. Moving to slide 7, if you look at number 3 step is aligning the strategies with the key process objectives. So we talked about Lambert on this slide is the author of one of our textbook authors. So he's talking about CRM. We talked about customer service management, how we manage our demand, how we fulfill our orders. So fulfilling the order could be building the part and packaging it and shipping it, but it could also be cutting the person's hair. So think about, it could be doing the person's taxes. It could be actually performing the concert that the entertainer has. So lots of different ways for that order fulfillment to take place depending on what the business is. Managing the flow of manufacturing, making sure we have relationships with our suppliers, making sure that we are not only designing new products the way that our customers want to buy them, but that we're getting them to the market. We don't want to decide that we're going to have this awesome bathing suit company in a country where it's freezing cold, all year round. We want to make sure we have a commercialized strategy that gets us to the market in a place where we can actually sell our product. And then how are we going to manage returns? Moving to slide 8, this is going to walk you through what do we need to consider about customer relationship management. So you can read through these. I'm not going to walk through every single one of these on slides 8, 9, 10. I think this goes all the way down through slide 16, but take a look at those. You need to understand what each one of those entails for your test. On slide 16, the 4th step, after we've made sure that we understand how the processes work together, is to develop some performance measures for the key processes. What are the things we have to measure consistently? And what are the things that we need to make sure we put a box around so that when we are measuring it, if it gets outside of that box, we know we have a problem and we need to go back and investigate what has caused that. Number 5 is to assess and improve the internal integration, making sure within our own walls, not our suppliers, but our own walls, what happens. Does our company know that our warehouse is running out of something? Are we aware of how we're scheduling our employees to be at work if we're using a service business? So are we making sure that if we're an accounting firm in February, March, and April, we are staffing up, we're not letting people take vacations, things like that, because that's the busiest time of the year for us when taxes are due on April 15th, except this year because of coronavirus, but that's okay. So number 6, develop the supply chain performance measures for the key processes. So what are the most important processes that we need to make sure we're measuring and figuring out, like our trading partners, if this trading partner is consistently late on an order, maybe we're overtaxing them, and maybe what we're doing is they have a capacity of 10,000 a week and we're ordering 12,000 a week. Maybe we need to go back to that supplier and find out that we need to qualify a second supplier because we're overtaxing them and they can't get the orders to us on time. We need to figure out what's causing that. But if we don't monitor it, we don't know that that's a problem. We're just walking around complaining all the time that we're out of a part. Number 7 is assessing and improving external process integration. So this is working with our knowledge management system, making sure that our relationships with our partners are good, and that we have a way to get information from our partners, our supply chain partners, and that they have a way to get information from us. If we move now to slide 18, we're going to extend that process to our second tier. So we went back in that very first step and we said, let's talk about what the most important key trading partners are. Now we're saying, once that's established, let's go now to the second tier. So what that means is it can be 2 different kinds of things. One can be things that enable our business. So in this example, they used RFID tags. If you don't have an RFID tag, most businesses can still run, but it definitely makes you more efficient if you can track your inventory all the way through the process, all the way through your cycle of your supply chain. So things like that are very important. Another way to look at a second tier supplier would be to think about that they're a large supplier to your large supplier. So if you buy something from a supplier and they're not the person that originates the raw material, then they have a supplier. That second tier, that's why it's called that, because if you map out like an org chart, this is my first row of suppliers. Their first row of suppliers is the second tier from you. So that's why they call it that. Number 9, reevaluating the integration model annually. If you do not have this governance, step number 9, if you're not looking at it and saying, is this model still working for us? Imagine if you were super efficient 10 years ago. Nobody was buying from you online. There was no mobile app. You didn't have any of that. If you never reevaluate your process and your integration model, you're never going to be recognizing all these ways that you can become more efficient. You're never going to be looking at new channels. You're never going to be figuring out ways, hey, maybe we should have chat on our customer service website so that people can get service quickly, and maybe we should implement a bot. So if they ask the question with these words in it, this is probably the answer they're looking for, and we can just have a robot respond, and a human doesn't even have to get involved. But if you're not assessing annually, you're not keeping up with the times, and you're not making all the ways that you can become more efficient with your business and all the automation that is coming with the digital age available to your business. On slide 19, the silo mentality. We talked about this when we did that tic-tac-toe exercise. I win, you lose. That's bad. The reason they call silos is because they used to say, here's marketing, here's sales, here's manufacturing, here's shipping. Everybody worried about their own swim lane and nobody crossed over. Nobody said, hey, these only fit 6 to a pallet. If we would have repackaged this, it would make it a lot easier on the people in the warehouse because they could fit 8 to a pallet. Things like that. So we want to make sure we're not only worrying about our own problems within our business, and we're not only worrying about our own problems outside of our business. If we choose the cheapest suppliers, this is on your very first test you took this semester, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. Quality, delivery, there's a lot of problems. So you want to make sure that that silo mentality is not how you're working with your suppliers, because it's not the effective way, and it's definitely not the way to save the most money. Your total cost will be lower if you have excellent supplier relationship management. So on slide 20, you'll see lack of supply chain visibility. This is a question on your test, but if you don't have the ability, if you're the person scheduling, for example, I'm going to turn this tool on this piece of equipment on this day. We're going to run 10,000 parts. That's going to take about 6.5 hours. We're going to take that tool down, put a different tool in. We're going to run 20,000 parts the next day. That's going to take about 4 days. If you're doing all that, but you don't have visibility to the schedule of what people are scheduled to be at the plant that day, if you don't have information about, do we have enough warehouse people to get the raw material to the machine site for that job, if you don't have visibility to will the raw material arrive in time, you have to be able to see the entire supply chain, what the customers are demanding, all the way back to the very beginning of what supply is coming in, or you're going to be ineffective and you're going to be wasting a lot of time. On slide 22, this is another obstacle. These are definitely on your test. This is a short answer test. So the answers begin on slide 20 and go through the remainder of the chapter. But lack of trust is a very obvious one. I think you would realize that. If you don't trust the system and you're doing things outside the system, you're wasting time making spreadsheets, double checking things, all those kinds of things are not good. Lack of knowledge is a huge thing. So a lot of people have really gone to a knowledge management system to make sure that people can put their lessons learned and really work on what does the supply chain need to know and making sure that people are trained. We've talked about the bullwhip effect every chapter just about this entire semester, but definitely that is a problem. If we don't trust the system, we cause the bullwhip effect, because I tell you I need 4, you tell the next person I better get 5 because I don't want to run out. She always gives me a bad forecast. That person says 7, the next person says 10, and before we know it, we have completely filled the supply chain with way more parts than we need, and then that becomes expensive because someone's got to inventory that. So we're going to talk then through managing supply chain risk on slide 28. So we don't want to increase safety stock unless it's on purpose. It's a way to mitigate risk. So if I today say I run a Lowe's, I'm in Houston, or a Home Depot, I'm in Houston, and I know hurricane season is going to come, I might order more water and plywood than I actually need, but I'm doing it strategically. I'm doing it for a reason so that I will be able to supply the market in the event of an emergency. If you'll move now to slide 31, we'll talk a little bit just about risk and security. And if you read on this slide about security badges and things that you can do to make sure that no one can get into your system or into your plant or into your law firm, into your salon, whatever business you're running, those are very important to make sure that you are securing your business. And then that last slide I didn't put on your test. So this is a little shorter chapter. It's only, we're winding down. We've got one more chapter and then the semester will be over. So I'm going to wrap this one up and we'll move on to chapter 14.